You see, Larry Bird was an absolute master of trash talk. For me, it was always a blast to play against him because he never shut up, but he did it in this uncanny way, almost like a ventriloquist, because you could never actually see his mouth move. Most guys in the league who talk trash tried to command the spotlight with loud voices and nonstop chatter. But Larry Bird was cut from a different cloth. He never wasted words or energy trying to posture or act tough. Instead, he waited. He surveyed the court the way a chess grandmaster surveys the board. He noted the defense, the spacing, the slightest hesitation in a defender's posture. Then, once the moment was perfect, he'd say something devastatingly simple and direct. The way he spoke was almost chilling. There was no yelling, no wild gesturing, just a level voice and a flat tone that sounded like someone simply stating an undeniable fact. And that was the part that truly dismantled people. Bird would look a defender right in the eye and casually narrate precisely what was about to happen next. He would announce the play. He would call out the exact spot on the court. On some nights, he'd even tell them which hand he planned to use. And the most insane part is, he never said it like a threat. He said it like someone describing tomorrow's weather. Then the ball would come in, the play would unfold, and Bird would walk to that exact spot on the hardwood. There was no panic, no rush, just a fluid movement, perfect timing and complete and total control. One quick step, a clean release, and the basketball would drop through the cylinder exactly as he had prophesied. It's Larry. If he wants the ball, he's going to get the ball. After the timeout, as we're walking back on the court, Xavier was on him. So he looks at Xavier and says, "I'm getting the ball." I chimed in, "I know. I'm going to be waiting." And he replied, "I'm going to get it right here, and I'm going to shoot it right in your face." 10 seconds. 5. And Bird has the basketball. Watch out. Larry Bird was just phenomenal in the way that he came out, went to that exact spot, and drained a shot right in my face. You know, he even said something like, "I didn't mean to leave 2 seconds on the clock." He wanted to hit the shot with 0 seconds remaining. I walked back to the sideline just thinking, damn, probably my best NBA moment involved Larry Bird. Same guy, same era. He walked into the gym and started stretching in front of our bench just before the game started. He announced, "I'm feeling like 41 tonight." And I'm just looking around at my teammates. Nobody's stepping up. Nobody's saying a word back to him. I thought to myself, well, this is strange. And then he scored his 41st point to start the fourth quarter and checked himself out with a 20-point lead, and that was the ballgame. You see, these guys could back it up. David wasn't soft, and Larry sure wasn't either. Larry would say, "Man, I'm going to give it to you anyway." One dribble. That relentless pattern started to wear guys down, not just on the court, but inside their heads. Defenders weren't just guarding a scorer anymore. They were guarding a man who seemed to know what the future held. NBA legends who went up against him still recount these stories today. They don't remember him for any wild insults or angry tirades. What they remember is the chilling certainty that whatever Bird said was about to happen was already written in stone. It felt completely inevitable. Bird had done it so consistently that everyone on the floor understood the gravity of the situation. The crowd knew it, the players knew it, and the unfortunate defender standing in front of him trying to stop the play definitely knew it. When Bird pointed to a spot on the floor, it felt like the game itself had already bent to his will. That smooth, unshakable confidence set him apart from every other trash talker in the league. He never begged for attention. He never instigated chaos. He didn't need any of that because the scoreboard always spoke for him. One sentence, one possession, another basket. That is why players are still talking about him decades later. It's not because he was the loudest player on the court, and it's not because he was the meanest guy in the league. They remember him because he was surgical with everything he did. Every single word served a purpose. Every movement had clear intent. And when Larry Bird spoke, everyone in that building knew exactly where the ball was headed. And yet, somehow, they were still powerless to stop it. First up is the story of Xavier McDaniel, one of the most rugged defenders of his time. He was physical, he was proud, and he never feared anyone. But even that ironclad confidence was about to be tested in one of the coldest moments Larry Bird ever produced. It was a late game situation with a tight score, the kind of moment where every single person in the arena knows what's coming. The crowd can sense it. The benches can sense it. Even the defenders are certain the ball is about to find its way to one man. Larry Bird looked directly at Xavier McDaniel and calmly told him what was coming next. There was no bluff, no anger, no dramatic monologue, just a quiet explanation delivered as if it were a simple fact. Bird told him the exact move he would use. He told him precisely where the shot would be taken from. He even went so far as to explain where McDaniel would be standing when the ball swished through the net. McDaniel didn't laugh. He didn't back away an inch. That simply wasn't his character. He remained locked in. He lowered his defensive stance, raised his hand, and prepared himself for the inevitable challenge like the proud defender he was. McDaniel was renowned for his toughness, for playing a physical game, for never allowing anyone to push him around. But this time, none of it made a difference. Bird caught the ball and sized him up. One quick look, one fluid motion. He rose up for the jumper at the exact spot he had predicted. Same spot, calm release, same result, splash, game over. He was an equal opportunity trash talker. It didn't matter who you were. Wait, so what would he say to you? You're known as one of the nicest guys on the planet? Well, I didn't get the worst of it, but from what I've heard over the years, you'd hear, get your hands off of me, or it's going to be a long night for you, that sort of thing. You can't guard me. And he would deliver it like a ventriloquist, because you'd never see his lips move. What kind of things did Bird say? Oh, he had a lot of them. I remember a couple of times he drove to the basket and I tried to jump up and block the shot. He'd say, you better sit down, boy. Or, no, you're going to pop your arm out of its socket before you get this. Before I even got there was a huge rivalry between him and Bernard King. And I remember my teammates telling me that he used to run by the Knicks bench shouting at the coach, Hubie Brown, you better get Bernard off of me. I'm liable to get 60 tonight. You better put somebody else on me. Just, things like that. That moment stayed with McDaniel for the rest of his career, decades. Not because they lost, but because of the sheer inevitability of it. Larry Bird didn't talk to intimidate. He spoke as if he were simply confirming a future that was already locked in. In his mind, the outcome was already a settled fact. Everyone else on the hardwood was just there to witness it happen. John Stockton, one of the most brilliant point guards to ever grace the NBA, experienced his own unforgettable brush with Bird's legendary foresight. But at the time, Stockton was a fresh-faced rookie, still finding his footing in the professional league. The very first time he squared off against Bird, something happened before the opening tip that threw him for a complete loop. As the teams were warming up, Bird nonchalantly made his way over to the Utah Jazz bench. There was no spectacle, no entourage. He was just going through his stretches, moving with the ease of any other game night. Then, Bird uttered something quietly to Stockton. There was no aggression in his voice, no performance for his teammates or the cameras. It felt less like trash talk and more like a man calmly outlining his agenda. Stockton, a meticulous student of the game, was immediately on high alert. He knew Bird wasn't the kind of player to waste words. If Larry said something, it was because he had already mapped out precisely how events were going to unfold. Of course, pre-game chatter doesn't determine a game's winner. The action on the court settles all scores, and that's precisely what made the moment so indelible for Stockton. Bird wasn't trying to distract his opponents, he was declaring his intentions. Then he would let his flawless execution on the court validate every single word. If there was ever a master of the art of trash talk, it was Gary Payton. The man known as the Glove built his entire legacy on it. On every single possession, he would talk, he would challenge, and he would relentlessly try to break opponents down mentally. For Payton, words were a weapon, and in his world, no one was off limits until he ran into Larry Bird. Bird didn't engage in that kind of battle. He didn't fire back with insults, he never got rattled. Instead, he remained perfectly calm the whole time. That unshakable confidence pushed Payton into completely uncharted waters. All of a sudden, the verbal sparring stopped. There was only silence. Because once Bird started doing exactly what he said he would, there was absolutely nothing left to say. Payton would later break down what made Bird different from any other player who ran his mouth on the court. You actually believed him. Not because he was loud or menacing, and not because he was trying to bully you in the moment. You believed him because he sounded absolutely certain. His tone was flat with no trace of emotion or exaggeration. You'd be scrambling back on defense, his words echoing in your head, questioning if he could possibly be serious. Then, mere seconds later, he would sink the shot from the exact spot in the exact way he had just described. That was the weapon that truly dismantled a player's psyche. Payton explained that Bird's trash talk was a masterclass in psychological warfare. He'd speak to the man guarding him. He'd speak to the opposing bench. At times, he'd even say it loud enough for the other team's coaching staff to overhear. Each word was a calculated move. Every moment was a deliberate setup. By the end of it, Payton learned a crucial lesson. When Larry Bird decided he was going to make a point, not a single person on that court could do anything to stop him. Clark Kellogg saw it from a different angle. While injuries unfortunately cut his NBA career short, his timing was impeccable. He competed right in the thick of Bird's most dominant years. This gave him a front row seat to how Bird's legendary commentary played out in the heat of the game. Kellogg wasn't always the primary target of Bird's most iconic taunts, but that wasn't the real story. What resonated with him were the subtle remarks, the quiet declarations Bird would make right in the middle of a play. They were just short, calmly delivered sentences, almost like he was narrating the game to himself. People would later ask Kellogg, "Wait, what could he possibly say to you? You're one of the friendliest guys out there." Well, that was just his style. Kellogg admitted, "I grew up idolizing Larry Bird. So it was funny, the first time I played against him my rookie year, I was assigned to guard him, and it took me a good 10 minutes to realize I should probably be defending him instead of just staring in awe. And he came down the court. It was hilarious. He came down once, and Mark West was the center for our team. Larry looked right at me. Then he glanced over at Mark and said, 'Hey, Mark, I'm about to go down to the block. I'm going to come off this screen. I'm going to catch the ball right there, turn around, and shoot it right in this rookie's face. And then I'm going to run back down the floor.' And that is precisely what happened. The 67 Notre Dame guy, a white player known as a really tough defender, right? Well, they assigned him to guard Larry, and Larry was just wearing his behind out. So Larry would jog by the other team's bench and shout at Doug Moe, their coach, 'Get him off of me.' That's disrespectful." "No," he said. "That's disrespectful. It's disrespectful for you all to put a white guy on me. Put a black guy on me." But Bird wasn't always out to humiliate people. He didn't have to be. Sometimes it was a single, simple sentence delivered during a live possession. By the time a defender had even processed the statement, the ball was already swishing through the net. Kellogg observed something fascinating about how veteran players handled it. They never erupted in fury. They didn't scream back. Instead, you'd see this split second of hesitation. Because Bird's words never felt like taunts. They felt like proven hypotheses that had been confirmed time and time again. That's what made him unlike anyone else. He didn't use words to overpower his opponents. He used them to confirm what was about to take place. Then he just stepped back and let the results speak for themselves. And believe me, Bird didn't shy away from the big men either. Their size didn't faze him. Their strength couldn't slow him down. Patrick Ewing was one of the most physically imposing and dominant centers of his era. He was accustomed to owning the paint and intimidating anyone who dared to challenge him near the basket. But when Larry Bird was on the court, even the most formidable defenders were about to discover that sheer confidence was not going to be enough. Patrick Ewing was famous for establishing his dominance in the paint. He was strong, physical, and relentless, forging a reputation by manhandling opponents and making them earn every single point. The majority of players who dared to challenge him near the rim felt that pressure instantly. But Larry Bird played an entirely different kind of game. Ewing soon realized that Bird's trash talk was never just random noise. It was methodical, direct, and perfectly timed. Bird would wait for the precise moment of defensive weakness. Then, just before the play developed, he would state something simple and factual. And once he spoke, when he spoke, the game simply obeyed. The shots would start to fall, the offensive sets would begin to click, and the scoreboard would inevitably swing in Bird's favor. What drove defenders crazy was that they knew it was about to happen. They recognized the spot on the floor, they anticipated the move, but the outcome was always the same. For Patrick Ewing, what lingered most was Bird's sheer composure. Utterly calm, laser-focused, and completely unbothered. For a warrior like Ewing who fed on Raw physicality and emotional fire, Bird's unwavering steadiness was deeply unnerving. This went beyond mere skill. It was the powerful presence he commanded on the court. Bird didn't need to be loud or throw endless insults. His confidence was a quiet storm, undeniable in its force. Every single play sent the exact same message. Larry Bird wasn't just participating in the game, he was controlling its very fabric. Danny Ainge learned this lesson very early in his career. Arriving in the league, Ainge was already a respected, tough defender with a knockdown shot. He was rarely rattled on the court, but defending Bird was an entirely new level of challenge. You couldn't let your guard down for a fraction of a second, not for a single heartbeat. Bird possessed an almost supernatural ability to spot the slightest vulnerability in a defense. A single misplaced step, a tiny moment of doubt, that was all the invitation he required. There were even times he would narrate the upcoming shot before the play even started, calmly and casually, as if he were stating a simple fact. Then, the possession would unfold precisely as he had predicted. The shot would rise, the ball would whisper through the net. For a young competitor like Ainge, it was a harsh education in ruthless efficiency. Bird never wasted a single motion. He never threw away a possession. Everything he did on that floor was driven by purpose. The true threat wasn't just the points he put on the board. It was his chilling accuracy in predicting them. Defenders would hear his plan out loud and still be utterly powerless to prevent it. Ainge came to a crucial realization. Guarding Larry Bird was never a simple assignment. It took perfect positioning, constant vigilance, and nerves forged in fire. And even with all that, Bird usually had the final say. If you love stories about NBA legends, make sure you hit that like button. Next up is Byron Scott, a speedy veteran guard who had battled against plenty of superstars throughout his time in the league. Still, even Scott saw moments where Bird's sheer force of will completely altered the course of a game. In one particular contest, Bird started to focus on Scott's teammate, John Hensley, who had been tasked with guarding him. But rather than just exploiting the mismatch, Bird matter-of-factly announced his assessment of the situation. There was no screaming, no big theatrics, just a direct critique of the defensive assignment. The comment stunned everyone on the floor, Scott included. It was a masterclass in how comfortable Bird was with seizing control. He never waited for the defense to set the tone. He bent the game to his will. That was the real brilliance behind Bird's infamous trash talk. It was rarely about a stream of insults or noisy showdowns. Bird used precision timing, sharp awareness, and subtle mental pressure to mold the game to his liking. His impact went far beyond handling the basketball. Defenders were forced to react to him. Coaches had to adjust their entire game plan for him. Entire defensive philosophies were scrambled just because Bird was on the court. That quiet dominance made every trip down the floor an uncomfortable experience for the other team. Kenny Smith was witness to another legendary moment that revealed just how razor-sharp Bird's mind was under immense pressure. Smith had been in his fair share of clutch moments, but this one play was burned into his memory. The game was tight, with only seconds ticking away. Bird secured the ball in the corner as the defense scrambled toward him. Brad Daugherty charged out, trying to force a contested shot and break his rhythm. Down by 1 point, Larry Bird gets the ball deep in the corner and he steps back to shoot a three. And right before he shoots it, you're thinking, oh my goodness, he's shooting for the win, not just the tie. So Brad Daugherty sprints out and Bird head fakes him, and as Daugherty flies by, Bird actually hits him on the backside with the ball, then calmly shoots it at the buzzer. The confidence to tag him on the rear as he flew by trying to make a block. I mean, there's no greater confidence than that. We were doing our best. We were trying, but when a guy is literally coming up the court narrating his shots, and, Bird talked an incredible amount of trash. This was in New Orleans. That's right, New Orleans. In that game, we're at the free throw line, and he's literally saying, left side, across the three-point line, and you're listening to him call the play. That is an incredibly tough feeling. But Bird remained perfectly composed. He executed a flawless pump fake that sent Daugherty soaring right past him. In that sliver of time, Bird did something truly audacious. As Daugherty flew by, Bird nonchalantly tapped the ball against him, a silent gesture that screamed, "Nice try." Then Bird gathered himself, rose up for the shot, and ended the play the only way he knew how. pure mastery. What left everyone speechless wasn't just the game-winning basket. It was Bird's incredible poise. In the heart of a chaotic, high-stakes moment, he had the presence of mind to send a taunting message without saying a thing. What's the wildest trash talk you've ever heard? Drop it in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more iconic sports stories. It was moments like these that showed why Bird's impact on the game went so much deeper than scoring. His timing, his swagger, and his awareness all worked in concert to apply suffocating pressure on anyone guarding him. When Larry Bird held the ball, the game belonged to him and him alone. Even Charles Barkley, one of the most unbreakable competitors in the history of the NBA, had tales of Bird's mental warfare. Barkley forged his legacy on toughness and a larger-than-life personality. He was intimidated by almost no one. But Bird had a unique method for getting under your skin. During one fierce battle, Bird turned his attention to the legendary Julius Erving. As the game progressed, Bird started talking to Barkley, telling him he needed to get Dr. J off of him. He openly declared that Erving couldn't guard him anymore. And as he kept talking, Bird kept scoring. Shot after relentless shot, possession after grueling possession. The steady barrage of verbal jabs combined with his flawless play began to fray everyone's nerves. Eventually, Erving had no choice but to confront Bird himself. It proved something fundamental. Bird never hesitated, no matter who he was facing. Not rookies, not all-stars, and certainly not living legends. He dictated the tempo, manipulated the matchups, and compelled his opponents to play his game. Even players with monumental reputations felt the immense pressure when Larry Bird was in his element. Doc Rivers thought he had seen everything on a basketball court, having squared off against the league's most formidable superstars. But nothing could have prepared him for the Larry Bird experience. In the middle of a game, Bird started to narrate the next play before a single pass was thrown. With chilling composure, he detailed the entire sequence for Rivers, mapping out every pass and every cut. There wasn't an ounce of uncertainty in his delivery. Bird wasn't guessing. He was issuing a spoiler alert. The outcome was a foregone conclusion, and all that was left was to watch it unfold. For any opponent, the moment was utterly disorienting. Larry Bird had no need for theatrics or shouting. You would never see him wildly gesturing to play to the cheap seats. Each word was a weapon, chosen with surgical precision. Every declaration carried the weight of prophecy, and with his calm delivery, the pressure would slowly suffocate you. He would state a fact, and the very next play would make it a reality, leaving defenders reeling. Even a seasoned pro like Doc Rivers confessed how unnerving it was. Having a rival calmly diagram his own impending success right to your face is one of the most devastating forms of psychological warfare ever witnessed in sports. It was brutal, it was clinical, and there was absolutely no good way to counter it. And somehow, Larry Bird made it seem completely second nature. His verbal jabs were never just random insults, they were perfectly timed strategic strikes. Every look he gave you across the floor had meaning. If you appreciate this level of mental mastery, make sure you hit that like button. Bird operated on a principle most athletes never figure out. Silence can be more menacing than a constant barrage of noise. A single, quiet declaration can land with more force than a lengthy tirade. His opponents were caught in a trap. Do I engage? Do I ignore him? By the time they tried to figure it out, Bird was one step ahead. The possession was over. The ball had already swished through the net. The entire play had materialized exactly as he had laid out just moments before. His mere presence could alter the very fabric of the contest. Bird pushed defenders into making choices they were not prepared for, ratcheting up the tension without so much as raising an eyebrow. Every move he made was another piece in a larger mental puzzle. A head fake here, a no-look pass there, a jump. Shot from the very spot he just called out. It was all a calculated effort to keep his opposition perpetually off balance and second-guessing. That mental stranglehold amplified the impact of everything he did. Every basket felt like a statement. Every assist felt like a lesson. Every possession felt like Bird already knew the final chapter. And that's because, in his mind, he did. Larry Bird's most dangerous weapon wasn't his dead-eye shooting or his incredible court vision. It was his unparalleled command of the game between the ears. He transformed preparation into a tangible advantage and turned confidence into a quiet form of terror. Bird wasn't just playing the same game as everyone else. He was the author, dictating the narrative, the conflict, and the climax. He controlled the possession, he controlled the play, and on most nights, you'd swear he controlled the entire building. That expert blend of focus, timing, and psychological dominance is why his name is still spoken with reverence. If you want more stories like this, be sure to subscribe to the channel because nobody did it better.